Hey, Brandon here. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another episode of the 2023 NFL Draft Rookie Report. As always, Jason DiRienzo, co-founder of the Devy Watch and recent graduate of the Scouting Academy, joins me tonight. Jason, how are you tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good, Brandon. How you doing, man?
Good. We were just talking pre-show. We're getting close to the draft, and we're
Yeah.
gonna talk about Israel Abanikanda, a running back who some people have high on their list, some people not so much. But we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get in depth on his profile as we approach the draft here. We're gonna talk about his 2022 season film. Great runner from ACC. I believe he led the nation in ACC anyway in rushing yards this year. We're going to talk about his expected draft capital as well as his dynasty value here as he gets drafted here next month. So let's get right to it, man. His size right now, 5'10", 216 pounds. These are the post-combine measurements. He came in with that size. We got a lot of running backs come to the combine, maybe underway a little bit, but he came in, made us happy. We know we like size with running backs, but his career statistics here, rushing, he had 378 attempts, 2,101 yards, 26 TDs, and a 5.6 average. Receiving 37, wasn't really involved. That's a 3-year career at Pitt. So, was involved a little bit in the passing game, but not as much as I think us PPR dynasty running backs like to see. So we're going to take a look at some PFF stats here. That's what we do. We kind of like to look at the zone and gap usage of these players, right? There's a versatility that comes into play when they can kind of go with both schemes, which is certainly good for their draft capital. He was 68% zone plays. He was 32% gap plays. So this is where we get into the meat and potatoes of the stats on the PFF stats. The yards after contact, he was 2.89. All right. And that was probably the lowest end of all of the backs. Most of the solid 5-6 top backs that we see in this class were all above 4. So you wouldn't know that probably by the explosive runs and the amount of yardage that he runs, but that's the stat that they came up with, and that's what we're going to use. And so missed tackles, forced 85, 22% of his attempts throughout his 3-year career. He 22% of the time, made a guy miss. Probably on the lower end of the scope of what we've seen, doing these shows. This is, by the way, Jason, our 23rd episode.
Wow.
So we've been really cranking these out here on the channel. His elusive rating, 58.6. Bijan came in first at 169. A-Chain is at 93. So he was the second to last worst elusive rating, at least on PFF stats, right? So when I think, again, you think of the explosiveness when you think of Abanikanda, and you're like, how's that possible? And I got some thoughts I want to talk about a little bit. Any of those stats kind of stick out at you? I mean, you surprised? I mean, that's kind of a little bit of the word on the street with his profile.
Yeah, I think some of these numbers are polarizing, but as we get into the film study and talk about the scouting report, I think we can explain some of this.
Yeah, so as we do on these shows, kind of like to go through my scouting report on my dashboard. So we break it down into traits. The first one we're going to talk about is his visions and patience. I'm going to kind of read here what I have from my dashboard. I said good but not great vision. Takes what is given to him but struggles when he has to find alternative lanes and gaps. Misses opportunities to bounce outside runs outside into space. He seems to kind of tend to go into the congested areas. Watching his film, he doesn't seem to bounce outside a lot. And I think he has some of that, acceleration and stuff to do that. He does show patience, but in the same breath of talking about that, I feel like sometimes it can hinder him because, he shows maybe a little too much patience and he appears indecisive at times. Did you come away with the same thoughts?
Yeah, I came away with very similar thoughts. I think for him, he's always looking for the home run. Watching him, sometimes I felt like I was watching high school film with some of the breakaways that he had. He definitely knows how to take the right gap. But at the same time, when he didn't take the right gap, it did not turn out very well. And I think you're right. I think he's a little bit too patient. And he just doesn't read the offensive line's gap, as it's developing very quickly. So that's something he's going to have to work on. I think it's going to affect him at the next level for sure.
Yeah, you got to be quick to think and make your decision, whether it's one cut outside or do what you need to do. So footwork and short area quickness, average footwork here and elusiveness I had doesn't display enough twitch or movement skills in high traffic, more of a glider than a jump cut runner. I thought he lacked a little lateral quickness in the second level. The majority of his long runs in 2022 film, this is kind of what I wanted to point out in this show here, were wide open lanes where he didn't have to make too many defenders miss. in the second level. And I have a note here: is it the ACC defenses or not? But I'll tell you what, like a lot of those, he had one game, I forget who it was against. He had like 6 touchdowns or something. I mean,
I think it was
he's
Virginia Tech or something like
Virginia,
that.
something. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, he's running through wide open lanes, but
Right.
what I didn't really see a lot on his film when it came to the footwork and kind of the movement and lateral movement abilities in the second level, he's kind of got like a one little hitch to kind of, make a guy miss a little bit. But man, everything he had, those long runs, he was like, once he hit 10, 15 yards, I mean, he just didn't really have
Yeah.
to do anything. I mean, he just ran,
Right. And that's what you saw a lot of too.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you as far as the footwork goes. I don't think I don't think he can drop his hips very well if he's in high speed pursuit.
Mhm.
I have trouble identifying what he's going to be at the next level because unless he can hit that gear initially within the first 8 to 10 yards, I'm not sure what he's going to get. And we'll get into the play strength part of it, but yeah,
Yeah.
the footwork, I just did not see it, and I wanted to.
Yeah, so he ran his acceleration and speed is the next trait we kind of talk about here. He ran track in high school. He has good acceleration, can immediately create separation. He has some juice when he hits the second level, splicing through defenders. So, I mean, for me, I think he's got enough speed to,
Mhm.
to win in the NFL. I don't think, he didn't run the 40. He was one of the backs that, we're going to talk about Sean Tucker in our next show too. Neither of those guys ran 40 times, but I mean, I think he has enough speed to win in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he does too. I mean, when he's gone, he's gone. If he gets into the open field, it's over with. Rarely saw him get caught from behind, maybe just a handful of times, but that's based on a lot of film that I was watching and a lot of games where he was just excelling.
Yeah.
But when I went back and I looked at some of his recruiting profile in 2019, he had at the regional opening or something like that, he had a 39-inch vertical and a 4.5 recorded 40. That 39-inch vertical tells a lot about his explosion, which we'd see on film. So I'm thinking he's probably like that 4.48, 4.5 type of speed. And that's what you see on film too.
Yeah, I would agree. His strength and contact balance, I have here, has the ability to slip arm tackles and bounce off shoulder tackles, but don't see a lot of leg drive in his game. Expected a more power from a 215-pound back, runs high, losing leverage, and consider him to have average contact balance. I came away and I had this here in my notes that I'm not sure he welcomes contact. So of course that's the game, but you can tell
Right.
when a running back actually, you look at Pacheco, right, in the Super Bowl. Not that I want to relive a nightmare as an Eagles fan,
Yeah.
but I mean that guy runs with drive and he is driven. But I think the good thing to him in his profile. Not that this is anything to do with strength or contact balance. He's going to be one of the younger players coming out in the draft, so he has the
Yes.
ability to
Yeah.
get into the weight room, build that power. I mean, like we've talked about on the show many times, most of these guys are not fully developed yet, and they still can continue to learn the game. So he's a young player, but strength and contact balance, I mean, I think it was okay, but I'm not sure that play strength to bowl over, safeties and linebackers in the NFL is there.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I was expecting a lot more. He can definitely break like one arm tackle attempts and lower body attempts. But again, it was just a lot of bad tackling from that
Yeah.
conference too that I saw. It was kind of ridiculous after a
Yeah.
little while of watching the film. So it was hard to get a good read on it. But I will say this, I think you brought up a great point. He's 20 years old now. He's going to turn 21 in October, I believe, is his month of his birthday. So
Right.
he's very young, can add some more functional strength, and I think we will see him add more mass. It's just whether or not he actually utilizes it on the field.
Yeah, yeah. So his pass catching, he caught 12 balls in 2022, mostly on screens and dump off. So he wasn't part of the passing plan. I don't know if that was the offense there at Pitt or not. So I think he looked comfortable catching the ball. On the other note here, the one last thing I wanted to talk about, when it comes to pass catching, is he had 3 fumbles in 2022.
Mhm.
So, ball security. And I don't know how big of an issue is, but we're doing the show.
Yeah.
We're going to fully profile them. That's just a little nugget of information, I'm sending out there for you.
Yeah, I think the amount of carries and the amount of production he had, I'm not too concerned about those fumbles, but yeah, he's definitely going to have to shore that up. And as far as pass catching, he's reliable, but he's not used in routes or anything like that. So that's
Mhm.
an area in which that we kind of need to temper expectations a bit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, so again, this is a perfect example for me of a player that comes, highly regarded coming into the draft cycle from a Devy standpoint. You and I are in the Devy,
Right.
watching Abanikanda for 3 years now, where the production gets people excited, and the production that you see, and then the numbers and the box scores, and oh, he must be really good. But, again, you got to take in the context. I mean, I agree with you. The tackling was pretty subpar in a
Oh,
lot of those games, which
man.
led to a lot of long touchdowns and a lot of
Mhm.
extra yardage in his padding, his yards per attempt and everything. So I'm not trying to take away anything from the young man, but at the same time, it's why you have to really watch the film and not get too hung up on the numbers,
Right.
on production. So let's discuss his draft capital.
Okay.
I've got him right now as a round 4 through 6. What do you see for him?
Yeah, I got around 3 through 4, and I really feel like he does have some skill set that NFL teams are gonna love. That burst, acceleration, the speed, and, a lot of times these guys aren't coming in as finished products like you said,
Right.
so I do think that he can improve in the mental processing area because I do think he's a smart player, so we'll kinda see how that pans out, but I got rounds 3 or 4.
Yeah, so his rookie draft selection, we just got done doing 2 more rookie mocks on my dashboard. He came in the 3rd round, kind of in the middle of the 3rd round in both of those mock drafts. Now, of course, we
Mhm.
had make believe landing spots. He lands in a great spot, but shit, after this free agency period, we're like in day 2 of the tampering process
I
or
know.
whatever of free agency, and there's a lot of good running backs sitting on the bench right now with no team. So it's going to be really
Right.
interesting to see how this class is. You're gonna have to listen to one of our podcasts because we're going to talk about it in our podcast in an episode or two. But I think he's a solid 3rd rounder. I mean, do you see him maybe sneaking into the 2nd round?
Yeah, I put late second just because if he lands in a good spot, obviously that's going to bump him up a little bit. But I think third round's perfect.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
his fantasy value, let's, put the, you know, go out 2 years, and where do you see, let's say he lands on a spot, he's part of a committee, gets some run early on, let's say it's year 3. Where do you see his future dynasty value kind of, what do you see his ceiling kind of being able to maybe achieve?
Yeah, I think he's a solid RB3. I think there's definitely an RB2 upside there just because I do think that, what I saw from like Chuba Hubbard when he had his opportunity, he was able to get some nice breakaways and do those sort of things. And I think Israel Abanikanda could possibly do that. But I think RB3 is probably the sweet spot for him.
Yeah, I got him as an RB 3 or 4. I'm not sure he gets inside the top 20. But we'll have to see what happens. His
I've
play,
seen crazier things than this season proved it to me. So that's
well,
trying
yeah.
to, it's
Yeah,
tough, man.
yeah. Listen, it's all about opportunity,
Right.
injury, right?
Exactly.
But if nobody was injured and everyone had a good landing spot, I see around RB 3 or 4. His
Yeah.
player comps, I'm not really good at player comps. I'll be the first to admit that. I see like a Jerome Ford kind of possible path. I mean, Jerome Ford came out of Cincinnati. People were excited about him. He
Mhm.
did have some speed, and then I questioned his play strength a little bit. Had some good nifty footwork, and was not nearly as productive as Abanikanda. But that's my comp for Izzy.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, he can do very similar things to what Jerome Ford could do, and I think that's a good comp. I have a Lamar Miller just because I remember Miller kind of the same, just taking advantage of his blockers, setting up for him, and taking advantage of long breakaways. But now that I said Chuba Hubbard, I can kind of see something a little bit
Yeah,
similar to that.
you know what? When you said that, I was like, that's not that bad of a comp.
Yeah,
I
when I
mean,
said that, I was like, "That's
not
pretty good,"
not
because I
too
don't think
bad.
Chuba Hubbard had very good play strength, but he was able to get those breakaways. So yeah,
Exactly, and he had all those big breakaway runs, right?
yep.
So, all right, well, there you guys have it. That is the show. I think he's just in the middle to later part of the pack of maybe our top 10 to 15 backs that are going to get drafted and hopefully make it to our dynasty rosters. But I appreciate you guys watching, and we've done a ton of these shows for all of your favorite rookies. I'll actually attach some of his game films, Abanikanda's game films that I've made over the course of the last year here, so you can kind of scout him for yourself. So hit that subscribe button again, and thank you for watching.